Welcome to Brox and Max. Like and subscribe if you like what you see, the content and the footage that I'm posting on here. Today we have to pull some parts off of my MC parts truck. I bought this truck specifically for the restoration process of the black one in the garage. This one has a pretty wiped out frame. The frame is not pretty, and the fire department that had it, they couldn't justify the frame repair, and the truck was older. I don't think people take into consideration this is not a truck that I'm quote-unquote cutting up. I need pretty specific parts for this build. Normally in a restoration, anybody that's restored things, you need a parts truck or two at least to make one good one. And even though they still make MR Max, very similar body style, I mean, they pretty much use the same cabs, minus the interior is a little bit different. The front end's changed a little bit. There's more plastic in them. The quarter fenders are plastic, the grills are different, but I can't just call up Mack and say, hey, I need all this piping and duct work for my 285 2-valve engine for my truck that I'm restoring. You gotta think outside the box. And like right here, I need this piece. This is pretty critical. This is the quarter fender bracket that I just don't have because my truck was an extended cab and the brackets were non-existent because they were the quarter fenders were bolted to the extended cab part of my truck. It's very unique what Mack has done in multiple, thousands of builds for fire trucks. Every fire truck is slightly different. It's kind of funny to see that they did not just make one run-of-the-mill truck. They were all built pretty much to order, custom build every single truck. Got a nice chrome bumper on it. I'll take that off and save it just in case I had some type of bad piece of luck with mine. You just can't find this stuff. So that's what I'm doing today, just pulling some parts off this, and I'll probably be safe. Well, again, for any of those fire truck enthusiasts, there's no offense to this truck. This truck is being used. It's just being repurposed as a parts truck. I will use every single piece that I possibly can off this truck. So, to save a little bit of time, I went to a buddy's junkyard and got all of these, I call them push lock. They're the quick snap together air fittings. You just clean them up. They're probably about 10 or 15 bucks a fitting if you were to buy them new. So as I'm installing and trimming up all this airline and stuff, if I make a mistake, I don't have to worry about that I ruined a ferrule, putting everything together the old style way. The nice part about these push lock fittings is you can reuse them. I pulled this off of a truck in a junkyard, and I just wanted to make this one easy, but you just compress the ring and it literally slides right out. Push it back in, doesn't come out. It's like a shark bite almost. And you just squeeze it together, pull it out. The brass ones is what I really like. I gotta put them in a vise or make some type of a tool to compress it more, but they do come out fairly easy if you know what you're doing. You cannot rip the airline out though. Let's see if I can make it fairly easy to understand. Here's the nice brass ones that I like to use, and I just kind of put this in a vise, pinch that collar, but the problem is you got to make sure the collar somewhat comes down square or else it won't work. So I'm going to try, this is 1/2 inch airline. I got a 1/2 inch wrench. Just put it in the vise. Squeeze it a little bit. Actually, I got a better idea. So you can get the ends of your open end wrench in the jaws of the chuck, and then you just kind of pry on it. Voila, comes right out. I'd like to take 5 minutes here to explain the little bit that was going on in my head and why I chose to build this truck the way that I'm building it. A friend of mine was here the other day and he looked at it and he goes, "Looks nice, but you can't polish a turd." Well, I'm trying. So again, this is a 1979 Mack MC with a little bit of upgrading with certain things of my taste to build on a truck. The roof lights are actually off of Mack granite. They happen to be the same hole pattern, so they're bullet lights, which they kind of look nice on there. And then with the upgraded air horns that you would normally see on a RD CH, probably not the granites though. Granites are different. The front wheels and rear wheels, those are off of Mack Visions. I just thought the hole style, the 6-hole diamond-like pattern kind of just gave this truck a little bit of a different taste in what I'm trying to duplicate in my head. And being that this truck is going to be a rollback, anything that I've ever seen with either MCs or MRs, they all have round Mack tanks on them. Well, I'm not going for that round look. It's going to have a body on it, so I'd rather have a square tank. And I was looking online trying to find stuff, and all I could really find was stuff off of junk internationals that I didn't particularly care for. I didn't want to go to a truck show and have somebody say, "Wow, that's a tank off an international." Well, I don't want to deal with that. So what I found, this is a Snyder tank off of a Brigadier. I felt it was appropriate for the build. I don't know if you can see it because of the reflection, but I had it polished up. The guy did a really, really good job, stand-up job. It helped that this tank came from down south, so we're not dealing with any type of salt damage or oxidation or me having to remake the tank straps or brackets or anything like that. Everything was pretty clean. I just cleaned everything up, painted it, polished it up, mounted it, we're good to go. And the same thing with the rear. The rear I got, believe it or not, this came out of a Mack DM steel nose, not original. Somebody obviously put it in after the fact. But this is a New Way air ride that I felt was appropriate because a lot of Mack's Superliners, CLs, R models, they had New Way, so I just felt it was appropriate. I didn't want to put Peterbilt air ride or a Freightliner, Airliner air ride underneath it. It just wasn't appealing to me. And the same thing, going to have the rear wheels up-piloted. The rear end is actually a Rockwell R170, but I'm not too keen on it. 4:33 ratio. We'll see how this goes. It's got a Road Ranger 10-speed in it. Later model. I think it's a 147, something around that. It had a 5-speed Mack, and I knew I wasn't going to be able to handle that. So I wanted something to be able to drive comfortably and have some fun, and figured a 10-speed would be, actually, I told my son, "What do you want? I'll give you a choice. You want a 13-speed or you want a 10-speed?" And he said, Dad, put a 10-speed in there. Well, don't mind me asking, why do you want a 10-speed? He goes, that's 3 less gears that I have to worry about. Okay, words of wisdom from a 10-year-old. But along with all of that, I had to buy a MC parts truck that was a standard, that had a Road Ranger in it. The cab is shot. There was just nothing that I could really do with it other than I need these critical parts. I mean, sure, I could make this shift bar with no real issues. It'd probably take me half a day to get it all figured out and what the lengths and the angles are, but it was handy to have a parts truck with a 10-speed in it. It was a 95 series, but I used the linkage, and this is a very unique, I've never seen one like this. Normally you see those Cabover linkages with the aluminum offset. It goes right offset to this side and then goes up to the cab. This is something that Mack must have created, obviously. It's got Mack stampings on it, but it's very unique. The more I'm dealing with this, it's a lot of MRMC specific stuff, but it's a fun build, and I'm just going to keep pecking away at it until it's completed. Today's mission is I'm going to mount up this battery box to its spot right here, and also take into effect when MCs or MRs were built, everything is shoved forward as far as it can. Even right here, you'll see as I'm putting this thing together, I have it literally tore right down because I sandblasted and painted everything. But there's a bracket I may have to make it because it was in terrible shape. But it's tied into this to mount the quarter fender. Everything is so shoved forward because think of, they're going to want to put something starting here, whether it would be a box van or a rollback or dump truck. It doesn't matter. They want to utilize every inch of frame that they possibly can, so everything gets shoved forward. So basically from the exhaust, that line from like the back of the turbo right there, they're going to put something starting right there and keep everything forward to make room. And boy, did they make room. This is my probably failed attempt, but we're going to give it a shot. When Mack put these together, obviously the air tanks were not on it. So I don't want to take this apart. I just want to bolt this thing in, but they're so close to tolerance that I could not get this bolt out when I took it apart, and it's literally flush with a nut on the back hitting this U-bolt for the air tank. So we're going to attempt to drill this out and see how successful I am before I just give up and decide I'm going to have to take the air tank off. So So my attempt worked. I just went to drill this out just enough to get down past this piece of 3/16 steel, and successful. It worked. that to work. But it does pay to have brand new bolts. You don't have to worry about a snag, nothing. It flies together. So, minus me just tightening things down, that's basically the next step in this process here. Battery box mounted, air tanks underneath, and of course plumb everything from shifting the transmission to rear end, brakes, air ride. It's all coming together nicely. I don't know if any of the viewers noticed the rear sliding window in this truck. I'm assuming they needed it to talk to the fireman in the extended cab part, because this was a hard mounted extended cab in this section here. So the cab still tilts, but the extended cab stays put, and it must have been a good way to communicate with each other. But for a fun fact, that actually is the same window cutout for an R model cab, Superliner cab, Brockway 700 series cab. That will all fit. It was kind of, I think that's kind of unique that there is some parts and pieces that belong to other models. This front axle, if you noticed, is hub piloted, obviously, because of the Mack Vision wheels. Mack Visions were built in the early 2000s until, well, they're still kind of making them. But this is a front end. It had a 13 or 14,000 pound front end, and I ended up putting a 20,000 pound front end that I had out of an MR that had hub piloted hubs. And I have I call it a meat scale. You hang it off a fork on a forklift. I was always curious as to what would the difference be between a 13,000 pound axle compared to a 20,000 pound axle. Well, there's only 100 pounds difference between what was on this was 13,000 with Dayton wheels, and then the 20,000 pound hub piloted with brake drums and everything. There was only 100 pounds difference. I found that funny, that people are thinking when you spec a truck out, oh, I want heavy duty, it's got to be built to last, built rugged, built tough. Only 100 pounds difference between a light duty axle compared to a heavy duty axle. Some fun information that I'm sure people never really took into consideration. So where we left off, we installed this battery box here. And now it's time to plumb up the air tanks. These original air tanks came from this truck. They were in between the rear ends because it was a spring ride truck. Here's the wet tank, and then those two are the secondary tanks. Well, now that I did air ride and the torque rods and just the stuff that's in the way, airbags, there's just not, it's not practical to put those back. So the parts MC that I had that came with this battery box also came with these air tanks. Same general idea. This is the wet tank, and then actually the wet tank is welded to the secondary tank along with this extra tank here. So what I did when I took all this apart, I marked everything. I had a paint marker, marked all the fittings. Like you see there, I got X's and ones and twos. There's all sorts of stuff, but it all made sense to me when I took it all apart. So it was one by one. It's a little bit time consuming just to make sure that you don't mess up and you make it right, because this truck was functional when I took everything apart. So I didn't want to make a mistake, and I didn't want to have, because there's some one-way check valves in it and some extra valving that I can say that I'm not the best with airline installation and how the whole totality of the airline functions work in a truck. This is a little bit simple, but there's just a little bit of just stuff like you got these valves here. Just wanted to make sure they were all in the right place. So today, I'm going to take this spaghetti and shorten it up a little bit. Last night I just spent the time to put everything in its proper spot, but now today's job is to just make everything short and hang it where it's supposed to go, like it was supposed to be from the factory. So I got this brass fitting that I want to get out of there. It's a quarter pipe, and my attempt is to use this stud extractor set that I've had, but I don't know how well it's going to go with brass, but we're going to find out in just a second here. Complete fail. Never use a stud extractor set on brass or any type of metal other than steel. Maybe stainless, but definitely was a complete fail. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed it, hit the like and subscribe button. Hope some of my shop tips can be useful. Keep checking my channel for new content.